back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of June and July. I decided, since I didn't really get through that many books in the month of June, that I was just going to combine the 2 months to do one relatively large wrap up. So since we have a good chunk of books to get through, I am going to get straight into it. So in the month of June, I read 8 books, and there is going to be no particular order. I am just going to start going through them. So the first book that I read, well, not the first book, but one of the books that I read in the month of June is Here's to Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This is a young adult sapphic duology that I read the first book back when I think I was in high school. I'm not entirely sure, but it was many years ago, and I've had this on my TBR for a little bit, and I listened to the audiobook and I really enjoyed it. Did I absolutely love it? No, but I think that was more so just because I waited so long before getting to the sequel. I think if I had read them relatively close together, I would have enjoyed this one more. That being said, I did give it 4 stars. But if you're looking for something that is cute, fluffy, but still has quite a bit of emotion, I would highly recommend this duology. And then in the month of June, I also read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I actually listened to the audiobook, which you're probably going to see as a going theme here. I've been working through a reading slump, so audiobooks have been my best friend lately. And this was no exception, and it did take me a bit longer than I expected to listen to the audiobook of this one. That being said, I still really enjoyed it. Did not love it as much as I loved the original trilogy, but I do think the most recent one that came out, The Sunrise and the Reaping, which is Haymitch's story, is going to hit a lot harder just because in general I love Haymitch. I think this was really well done. It gives you a perspective from somebody who's a villain when he was younger, and you see how he ended up getting to where he is in the original trilogy, which was really interesting. And that being said, I also gave this book 4 stars. And then I also decided to go ahead and continue the Twisted series by Anna Huang, so I read Listen to Twisted Hate, and I love this one. I did end up giving it 4 stars, but I keep thinking about this book, so I think it's more like a 4.25 stars. Something about the animosity between these 2 characters, and they have so much backstory just because it's her best friend's brother, and needless to say, they haven't gotten along ever. But if you're looking for something fun and quick to get through, I really recommend this series. Then I also decided to continue the Maid series by Danielle Lowry, so I read the second book, The Maddest Obsession, which I believe was technically on my Maid TBR, and I did not get to it. Or maybe it wasn't, and I wanted it to be. But needless to say, I flew through this book. I really enjoyed it. I loved Christian and Gianna as a couple. I think they were so well done. And I also mentioned it at some point, I think it was during my reading vlog when I was reading this book, that I love that we got the backstory of Christian that I felt like we were missing for Nico, and it added so much more to the story. That being said, I am not a big mafia romance reader, and I still really enjoyed this. And I did give this one 4 stars as well. I also forgot that in the month of June, I read House of Frost and Feathers, which was a advanced reader copy that I got from NetGalley, and I read it on my Kindle, and I did not talk about this book anywhere because I was not the biggest fan, and I never want to harp on a book, especially right before release. I just feel like that's not what I'm here for. I don't want to be putting authors down. Now, just to be honest, it was not my favorite book. I thought I was going to love it. It was very folklore, fantasy-esque young adult, but it was not for me. Not only did I not connect to the characters, but I also just didn't connect with the writing itself. So that is all I will say on that book. I did read Play Along by Liz Humford. Absolutely loved it. Nobody is shocked. I have given, I believe, every book in this series 5 stars. I think The Right Move was technically 4.5. But I adore the Windy City series. I'm not going to get too much into it because I talk about it so much. But I loved Isaiah and Kennedy, and seeing their relationship, in a sense, like the little backstory you get at the beginning and how they end up to where they end up getting to was just beautiful. It's like, yes, it's a cute, in a sense, fluffy romance, sports romance book, but there's also so much more to it, and these characters are so well done. They feel so real, and if you don't like sports romance, I would still say give this series a go. Now, I did have 2 5-stars in the month of June. So the first one is Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the second book in the Boys of Tommen series, and this is such a hard book to read. And that's really saying something because the first book was also hard to read, but this was tenfold. I'm not going to get too much into it. All I'm going to say is read your trigger warnings before picking up the first book in this series. I absolutely loved this story, and I love the resolution that we got on Johnny and Shannon in this story. And then for the reason that I am still in my reading slump, I did in fact read Magnolia Park's A Long Way Home. And as I was reading it, I was thinking 4.5 stars throughout the entire book. And I would say maybe the last 30 pages destroyed me. It didn't put me back together. It just destroyed me. And here I am. This hurt so much more than I was expecting it to. The Magnolia Parks universe in general, it's just very toxic romances between all of these characters that in a sense grew up together. And all I'm gonna say is I was not expecting that ending. I felt like we were finally getting some resolution, and that hurt. And that's it. That's all I'm gonna say. That ending bumped it to a 5 stars, but it also put me in a reading slump, so just a little heads up if you're thinking about reading this series. I did have a better reading month in the month of July. We did have Summerween. I believe it was the 5th to the 12th of this month, and I did get through some of my Summerween TBR, primarily all the short books, but I did have a really good time, and I got through what I could. I was reading. Obviously I was reading. I was working during the week. I read What Moves the Dead by Tinking Fisher, and this was short. Was it fun? No. Was it enjoyable? But the writing was really good, and I think that's what made me give it the 3.5 stars. I didn't particularly connect to any of the characters. I don't know if it was just that it was too short or just that I didn't connect to them, and that's okay. But it was a quick read, and it was very atmospheric, and it was a great way to start the readathon. Also by Tinking Fisher, I did read Nettle and Bone, and I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Again, very atmospheric. I love Tinking Fisher's writing style, and this is just a very quirky book. It's a little bit of horror, a little bit of fantasy, and I feel like it was just really well done, especially for being, I believe it's like 230 pages. And then definitely my favorite book that I read during the Summerween readathon was A Woman Eating by Claire Coda, and I loved this book. It was like another vampire story, but it was unlike any vampire story. I also partially listened to the audiobook for this one, and oh my goodness, the narrator did such a good job. Long story short, she is a vampire, and it also goes into her backstory / trauma with her mother, which I felt was really refreshing during this story. If you're looking for a vampire book that is so different from any vampire book you've ever read, definitely pick this up. That being said, I don't know if I said, but I gave it 5 stars. And then I definitely feel like for this next book, I need a round of applause. I have tried picking up A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross at least 3 or 4 times. Every single time I get about 230 pages in and I put it down, and I finally finished it. And mind you, I did try the audiobook twice, and this time I did listen to the audiobook, but I think it was just the right time for me to read it because this story hit so good. I gave it 4 stars. I already knew I love Rebecca Ross's writing going into it because The Letters of Enchantment is one of my favorite duologies that I've ever read. Her writing is very whimsical, lyrical, and this has a lot of folklore. And you have Jack and Adira, and long story short, They are these two sides of the aisles, these two clans, and they've been battling for as long as anybody can remember, and they're trying to coordinate peace between the two clans. And there is some twists and turns at the end, and I'm very excited to pick up the second book in this series. I gave this 4 stars. In the month of July, I also read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. No shock, I also gave this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. First of all, Abby Jimenez just does such a good job in general of writing very deep and well thought out characters. But as they go on, I feel like we just get so much more from the characters, and then the romance, in a sense, kind of becomes a subplot. But I thought this book was so well done. The backstory that we get on Emma added so much to the story, and Justin was such a good character. And then on top of that, as always, getting little bits and pieces from our previous couples in this book was just chef's kiss. Okay, and for the last book that I read that was a part of my July TBR, I did read The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han, and I love this. I gave it 5 stars. I want no criticism whatsoever on this book. It was just a good time, and I flew through it, and I loved being with these characters and the setting. It was just a perfect summer pool/beach read. Okay, and so that is all the books that I read from my July TBR, because I then proceeded to binge the rest of the Summer I Turned Pretty series, and I did give both of these 4 stars. I feel like as you go into book 2, it just takes such a turn with the grief in this story, and then you also have Belly just having a lot more complex feelings and acting her age. Let's say she's acting her age, because we have to remember that she is, what, I think 16 or 17 in this book. So all the criticism that Belly gets, I feel like, is not warranted, because this is young adult. They are teenagers. And on top of being teenagers, she's going through a lot emotionally, losing somebody who is very, very close to her, a parental figure. And then in book 3, you also see a little bit more of the back and forth with the love triangle between the 2 brothers. If anybody has watched Vampire Diaries, it's really funny, because that is what I picture as like the OG love triangle when it comes to fictional characters. And this felt like that, but summer romance and young adult, and it was definitely interesting to read. I also cried throughout this. I think the grief is so pertinent in books 2 and 3 that it took me out of the story just a little bit. In book 2, I wanted her to end up with one of the characters, and then it completely switched by book 3, which is when she got with the person that I wanted to see her with in book 2. So it was really interesting the way that it was done, but I'm very excited to be able to watch the TV show now. Okay, and the last 2 books that I read / listened to in the month of July, I listened to Frida McFadden's, I believe it's her newest release, The Tenant, which I loved. I thought it was a great thriller, given I've not read any of Frida McFadden's other books. But it was really interesting. It gripped me from page 1. I think I listened to it in literally like a few hours. It was a fast-paced, interesting story, and I did give it 4 stars. And then I listened to Blood Over Brightheaven by Emma Wong. I gave it 5 stars, and I definitely want to get a copy once I'm out of my book buying ban for my shelves. I don't even know how to put into words how much I loved it, so I'm just gonna read you guys my Goodreads review. I said 4.75 stars. Wow, this book was everything I imagined and so much more. Fantasy elements, dark academia, and some of the best writing I've read all year long. It was such a well done combo of everything that I just said, and I very much connected to the characters. I felt the feminine rage in the story, and it was just so good. So that is all I'm going to say about that. I definitely highly, highly recommend picking that one up if it sounds any kind of interesting to you. And then there are 2 books that I will mention just because I did almost finish them in the month of June. July. But I am 53% of the way into the last book in the Maid series by Daniel Laurie, which is The Darkest Temptation, and I'm not going to obviously give full thoughts because I don't have full thoughts on this story yet, but very, very confused. I have very mixed feelings. I like Ronan as a character on his own. I don't mind Mila. Do I see them together? No. I could see Mila with Ivan. I could see the romance there. But I feel like at the beginning it's just very insta-lusty. So that's all I'm gonna say. We'll see how the other half of the book ends up going and if it picks up for me at all. And then I am currently listening to Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. And I will say it was a bit slow at the beginning, which is why I haven't finished it yet. But if I update my spot, I'm probably almost done with it. I know I have about 3 hours left of the audiobook. I think the narrators are doing such a good job with the story. And I love how it's such an authentic take on vampirism. And that is all I'm going to say on this one so far. And that is all the books that I read in the month of June and July. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What are some of the best books you read during the summer? What are some of the worst? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!